Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're doing a radio install on this 2012 Jeep Patriot. Now in this install we're going to show you how to remove the factory radio. We'll head over to the bench, show you the new parts we're installing, including the radio, dash kit, and wiring harness. We'll come back here to get everything reinstalled. Let's get started. Before we dive into things, a couple of things to know. Our Patriot here was not equipped with the factory amplifier. It does not have steering wheel volume controls on the back side of the steering wheel. It's basically a base trim model. We don't have factory nav obviously either as well. Now if you had any of those options, we can certainly link those different parts in the description and we can talk about them a little bit more here in a moment once we head over to the bench. Regardless, this install video will still apply to you. To get started, to pull this radio out, this whole bezel is actually just held in with clips and it should easily disconnect and allow access to get to the screws of the radio. Now we have a panel tool here and what we're going to do is just start working it in. What we need to do is pop this panel out of the way. All right, so that came on out. One of the vents did stay. It's all right. We can just pop it right back in here once we take this panel off. There's going to be one harness holding in their heating and air controls. Disconnect that. Next here we have our radio. Now it's going to be held in with either Phillips screws or 7mm bolts. It'll take both. Go ahead and pull the radio. Now you're going to have a few harnesses on the back of the radio. Most of them have little tabs that you press in and it should release the harness itself. Just like so. Okay. Now depending if you're doing a single din or a double din, if you're doing a traditional double din that has a deep mounted chassis, this inner support brace will have to come out as well. As you can see, there are a few Phillips screws holding in that brace. Once you remove that screws, it'll take you a minute, but you can work this brace out of the way, which will open up this pocket to a full-size double din. Keep that in mind. If you're having clearance issues, this bracket will need to come out. Okay. So with our radio out of the way, at this point of time, let's head over to the bench to show you the parts that we're going to need for our install. All right, so here at the bench now, the parts that we're using in our install today, first and foremost, is the radio that we've chosen to put in. It's this Sony XAV AX150. It's a double din screen that features both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it has a single din chassis. You'll still need a double din dash kit, but this allows a little bit more space in the dash. It's a great unit for the price. Now, to accommodate this unit in the factory location, we do need some adapters. Our dash kit here is the Metro 956511. We'll need an antenna adapter. This is the Metro 40-EU10. And depending on the trim of your Patriot, you may or may not need steering wheel control retention or factory amplifier retention. Regardless, we have the Crux SWRCR-59D. This harness retains both factory amplified and not, as well as steering wheel volume controls. If you don't have those steering wheel volume controls on the steering wheel that are commonly found even behind the steering wheel itself, you'll need the SWRCR-26. This is a cheaper alternative and it doesn't retain features that you don't have. Now additionally here, we'd like to add these little USB flush mount adapters. We'll find a good place to put this. Since our CarPlay and Android Auto is wired, we'll need to ensure that we have a USB at a convenient location that connects to the radio to access those features on our new aftermarket head unit. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to add the harness with our Sony. And we're going to grab the harness out of our box here. Since we don't have steering wheel controls, we're using this one here today. Today we're going to be soldering our connections. Alright, so here at the bench, what we've done here is we grabbed the harness out of our Crux box and then the harness that's included with our radio. Now, for the most part, it's going to be matching color to color. However, that's not always 100% accurate, as sometimes manufacturers may change the function of what that wire does, and the color may not match generally industry standards. So always double check the function of the wire, and it's always a good idea to review the manual information that's provided by your wiring harness. Just a good rule of thumb here. Now what we're going to do is make those connections today, and as mentioned before, we're going to be soldering our connections. We've preloaded our harness with some heat shrink. And as we solder those connections, once those connections cool, we'll move the heat shrink over and shrink them down with a heat gun. Now, if you don't know how to solder, you can certainly use other alternatives like butt connectors, or even better, crimp caps. Just don't twist and tape or use wire nuts. It's just not designed for an automotive application. Okay, so we started soldering our connections here. Now, in terms of our speaker wire, there are a couple of things to take note. If you have the factory amplified sound system, generally it's indicated by either a factory amplified logo, Infinity, Alpine, Harman Kardon, Bose, anything like that, or you see like a factory subwoofer, that generally indicates you have a factory amplifier. And on Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge vehicles, there's something you have to take note of. Factory amplifier is only wired to take the 2 channels of input, and it happens to be the rear channels. So if you just hook up color for color and you have the factory amp, your CarPlay and Android Auto notifications, you're not going to hear them because generally those only come through the front speakers. Now, this is going to make a lot more sense if you take a look at your instructions here. If you have the non-amplified or the amplified system, it basically diagrams how to make those wiring connections. We go over this manual in greater detail here on the channel, so if you want to see that video in action, we'll link it in the description. Just as a quick summary here, if you have a factory amplifier, you're going to wire your aftermarket radios white, white, black, gray, gray, black to the Crux harnesses green, green, black, purple, purple, black, respectively. On your radio harness, you won't use those greens and black, purples. And on your Crux harness, you won't use the whites or the grays. Those will just be unused. Now, if you don't have the amplified sound system, in our case, that applies. It is color for color. So, again, keep in mind, look at the video. We'll link it in the description. It explains that a lot more in detail. All right, so we've soldered up our connections here, as you can see. In our case, everything actually was 100% color for color in our specific instance. Wires we didn't use. We didn't need the pink vehicle speed sense. Generally, that's for navigation or wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, which we don't have any of those in our radio. We hooked up an extra amp turn-on our blue-white wire in case we had an amplifier down the road. We just teed into that. Now, we are doing a backup camera, and this Crux harness only puts out about an amp or 2 of power output from the accessory wire. And if we want to power a backup camera off of this accessory wire, we added just a little relay in here. Totally optional if you're not doing a backup camera, or if you're only powering the backup camera off the reverse light, you won't need a relay. We like to throw those in these certain circumstances here. We added another accessory wire off because we have the relay. We have 10 amps here. And like mentioned before, everything else is color for color. For our ground, we added our parking brake wire to our ground. We can do that in Sony's. You can't do that necessarily in Pioneers or Alpines. You'll need some sort of bypass, and we can link that in the description or those videos that explain that a little bit more in depth. We finished moving our heat shrink up and over those connections, and we're going to go ahead and shrink them down with a heat gun. Okay, so we finished our wiring harness adapter here. We used some high temperature Tesa tape after we heat shrunk our connections. Looks nice and clean. Like I said before, this is the non-amplified version. So with our adapter here for our rear speakers, you plug it into non-amplified. Again, if you had amplified, you plug this harness into this other port, and then you'd wire these colors to the front speaker outputs of the radio. So that's all done. Got everything zip tied nice and clean. Like I said before, we kept a little extra red accessory off. We're going to power a camera in a second video. and we have an amplifier turn on wire in case we had an amp down the road. So this is all done. Like mentioned before, there's no other action needed for this because we don't have steering wheel volume controls. If you did, generally your module would have dip switches, so you would set that appropriately for your radio. Let's go ahead and set this off to the side. Now we spent some time getting our dash kit and bracket on. Essentially they're two little side brackets, and you put on this little trim piece here. We haven't taken the plastic off the radio. We'll do that once the radio is fully installed, but we went ahead and put in our screws on each side. Now generally the 95-65-11 dash kit will come with two sets of these wide side brackets. They're different widths depending on how deep of a bezel your radio has. Ours is a pretty deep bezel, so we went with the wider trim pieces. If you had a very shallow bezel, they provide really narrow trim pieces, so you don't have a huge overhang. So just depending on the radio you're installing, you'll use the appropriate side pieces. With that all on, got our screws all in. That's good to go. At this point of time, with our harness done and our radio prepared, let's head to the car to get everything installed. So at this point of time, let's grab our harness adapter. Let's go ahead and get this now plugged on in. Just like so. So with that connection here, we also connected our antenna adapter. Now we can just kind of tuck this down into the dash. Let's start making our connections at the radio. Plug in our main harness, our antenna, and any other accessories like our Bluetooth mic, which we mounted on the A-pillar. Backup camera wire. Grab our heating and air controls here, plug it in. Okay, before we fully snap this into place, let's go ahead and test everything to make sure it's working properly. Okay, everything seems to be working okay. So at this point in time, we can go ahead and reassemble the dash. Now, for those that are wondering, we put our flush mount USB here. We had a blink here. Sometimes you have an AC power socket there. Sometimes it's a blink. So we'll link this adapter here. It's about 3 foot, and it spans from here. We just ran it underneath the center console. We'll type this up underneath, but that's where it connects into our radio USB connection, and that runs up to the radio itself. So that's about it for this install. We don't have steering wheel volume controls to test, but in this install we also did a backup camera. And if you want to see how we did the backup camera and get that wired in to this aftermarket radio, we'll link that video down in the description for you. Additionally, if you like any of the parts that we used in today's install, we'll make sure we link them for your convenience. That's about it for this install. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time, and we will see you in the next video.